Based on our schematic here, this is the orange and black data bus here. Goes to there, branches off there. That's the engine computer. It's naming the 1.8, 2.8, and 2 liter as 60 and 58. Those are the pin numbers of the computer. But on the 1.9, which is what we have, it's pin 6 and 7. Now I'm looking for orange and black wires. Should be a pair of them. They'll probably be next to each other. What did I say, 6 and 7? I get to use my lighted magnifying glass here. That's what old men use. And well, that's the softest black I ever saw in my life. But there are two wires next to each other on 6 and 7. They're orange and black, I guess. Get it plugged back in, we'll get the scope. Okay, I got out the pico scope. Had a comment on one of my videos where I said a scope wasn't necessary on this, and the commenter said, "You really need to get a scope." Well, I have a scope, and I've used a scope, and I've owned a scope for 20 years. How long have you been in the industry, sir? I probably owned a scope for 30 years. My first scope was a Fluke 97 scope. That tells you anything. That's a dinosaur. Anyway. So, got the scope hook up, got the ground there. I'm going to jump this to 12 volts a bit to see if channel over range, and then it adapts, and then it says 12 volts. Okay, so I'm going to change the settings a bit, and I guess I could just back probe in here real quick. I might do a second channel, or I might just move this. That's on our orange and black wire. Nothing on there. So go ahead and turn the car on. Seeing something on there every once in a while, pops up something. And what I seem to be getting there is a random pattern, but since it's auto ranging, this is at 50 millivolts. So let's see how big that pattern is. I'm going to go ahead and pause it, and then I'm going to bring down some rulers to see how big that pattern is. We'll stick that ruler on the top. Oops. And then this ruler on the bottom. And if we look up here, we can see our delta. That's 3.96 millivolt. If we look up here, we can see our delta. That's 3.3 millivolts and negative 6.7 millivolts. Now, 3 and 6 millivolts is just next to nothing. But I have to point out, it almost looks like a square wave pattern. Let's zoom into that. So I think that's the computer attempting a data packet, but either the wire shorted to ground or the computer shorted to ground internally, something like that, keeping it very, very near 0 volts. And so even though the computer's trying to put a 5 volt waveform on there, or a waveform on there, I think I should say, that it's only able to bring it up like 0.3 millivolts. So maybe we need to start with unplugging computers to see if one of the computers is shorted internally, and like the instrument cluster. But since we're here at the engine computer, we can go ahead and just unplug that real quick. I'm going to go ahead and turn the key off first. So now that that's unhooked, let's restart our scope and see if our pattern changed any. I'm just going to close out these rulers and hit play. And it seems we have nothing. Oh, key's still off. Let me go turn the key on. And unfortunately, I'm still zoomed in. Let me zoom back out. And there's that same pattern again. Very, very small, like in the neighborhood of 5 to 6 millivolts. So obviously unplugging the engine computer didn't change anything. Might be some other tests we need to do first, but we had trouble codes relating to data bus network. I really think we probably need to unplug the instrument cluster, see if it's bringing the network down. Obviously the ABS unit can cause that. That's pretty common on Passats, and the airbag computer can cause it. So airbag computer is really hard to get to. Ain't no way I'm going to be unplugging that at this point. But I will. I think the ABS unit is a little bit easier to get to than the instrument cluster. It's back in this area here. I think I'm going to go ahead and pull the breather out and try and unplug the ABS unit to see if the ABS unit has failed and is bringing the computer network down. Connector's deep down inside there. This thing pops out of here pretty easy if I release the tabs. There it is right there. I don't need to do that, but that'll help me get my hand back in there to unplug it, but it's kind of deep down in there, hard to get to, but I'll unplug it and see what happens. Okay, I got the ABS computer unplugged, and I'm going to plug the engine computer back in. And let's take a look at our pattern on the scope now. Definitely seems different. Well, I guess let's take a look at it. My key's probably off. Let me turn the key on. That seems much more recognizable as data packets, but the voltages don't seem right. Let me switch this off auto ranging. Switch this to 5 volts. And let me zoom back out. And that really shows nothing. So probably not the problem. ABS computer, meaning the ABS computer isn't drawing the data bus network down. We'll go ahead and check the other data bus wire at the engine computer while we have it on 5 volts. Okay, taking the back probe out of one side, putting it in the other. Still shows basically nothing on the scope. Let me start the car and see if it changed anything. to change something. Car runs now. So obviously the ABS computer was drawing the communication data bus down, but I don't understand why I'm not seeing a problem or not seeing a pattern on it right now. Maybe my scope's frozen. Let me take my lead and I'll put it on the battery like this. And I'll see if it changes. And it does seem to change. Of course, it's taking it to 12 volts and that's out of range on this. Let me go ahead and change this to 20 volts. And then we'll touch the battery a few times. And let me back probe that data bus network again. Well, that's more like what I was expecting to see. Let me pause that. And I'll zoom in. Zoom in some more. Strange, it seems like a really noisy square wave. Maybe that's good enough though. Obviously the car's running. Let's scan it and see if we can get communication with the engine computer. I'm sorry, with the airbag computer. Okay, I got VADCOM plugged into this computer now, and we'll start VADCOM here. We'll go ahead and scan the engine computer and see if what trouble codes are there. A bunch of them. Mass airflow sensor, because I got the mass airflow sensor unplugged. Map sensor, throttle sensor. But I'm going to clear those and see what reoccurs, because if I've solved the problem I want to know. I have a missing message from ABS computer. That's expected because I have the ABS computer unplugged, and a mass airflow sensor because I have the mass airflow sensor removed from the car in order to unplug it. So that seems like that might be a fixed car. Now let's try and scan the airbag. And we are getting communication with the airbag. I'm going to clear that and see if it reoccurs. So it seems like we found our problem. Let me turn off the car here. Okay, so it seems like we found our problem. The ABS module has failed, and it's dragging down communication on the entire powertrain data bus. So it seems like we found our problem. The ABS module has failed, and it's dragging down the communication on the powertrain data bus. So it's eliminating the engine computer from communicating, obviously the ABS computer and the airbag computer. So I think we've solved our problem. The question is, what repair are we going to recommend? You can send these ABS modules off and have them rebuilt. As I said, this is a common problem on Passats. And I usually like to send those off on Passats because Passats, it's really hard to get the right one. There's lots. If you order a used one, they're going to send you the wrong one 3 or 4 times, and then they're going to say, we don't want to send you any more. And that's what I've basically found. It's almost impossible to get a used one. So I really like to send those off, have them rebuilt, and come back. Every once in a while, though, they'll get one and they'll say, we can't fix this one, and they'll send it back to you, and it's a complete waste of time for you and your customer. In that situation, you do have to look for a used one. I strongly suggest when you get a used one, you compare the part number. Do not mount it on the car if the part number doesn't match exactly. you will have problems. And you also need to try and get the coding out of the original one, and if you can't get the coding out of the original one because it's not communicating, you're going to have a real hard time coding the new one. Might even end up with a trip to the dealership. Now there's a way, and there's Rostec videos on that to try and help you. But here's the thing about a Jetta or a Golf. I'm a TDI specialist and I work on a lot of these Mark IVs, so I probably have one of these, and so a used option is a pretty good one, and they seem to be much more reliable on the Jetta than on the Passats any day. This is probably the only one I can remember, but I've done probably 10 or 15 Passats. So I think I'm going to recommend a used one, and we will, if the customer okays it, we might show a completed video. Okay, on our silver Golf Tdi there, we have finished installing a used ABS unit, and now here's our auto scan. We don't have any codes in the engine computer. Before we had communication codes there. We do have communication with the ABS unit, which we didn't have before. We do have an ABS wheel speed sensor fault, but we took a look at that, and the wires are broken to the sensor, so the customer's probably going to handle that himself. We do have communication with the airbag computer, which we didn't have before. We do have still have radio no communication trouble codes here, and central control module, no communication with the central convenience module. But obviously we had a communication problem on the main powertrain data bus network, and that seems to be solved now. We already showed you that it ran with the ABS computer disconnected. I guess we'll go drive it. I've just finished the road test on this Golf, and it is left with the ABS light on because it has that wheel speed sensor problem, which is the wires broke at the front left wheel here. You can see here this wire has been cut. Some new parts here, ball joint, tie rod, strut. It is plugged into the ABS sensor, and of course the brake wear sensor wire is cut right here, and there's supposed to be a bracket coming off of here that's missing that holds this in place. So our diagnosis was correct, and even though it behaved like an immobilizer problem, it wasn't actually an immobilizer problem. It was a communication problem. The communication from the instrument cluster wasn't working to the engine computer because the data bus network was being drawn down by the ABS computer. If you enjoyed this video or if you learned anything from it, be sure and click the like button, and don't forget to visit my website at www.kansascitytdi.com. You're welcome to put any questions you have in the comments of the video below. Please don't call me. If you want to watch some more of my videos, there's be one right there, and don't forget to subscribe.